My guest on this episode of Suds and Search is Anders Hjorth. Anders is a veteran digital marketer and the founder of Innovell, a company that provides digital marketing insights based on in-depth research. Anders is a serial entrepreneur who has founded multiple digital marketing agencies. In 2016, his agency BDBL was acquired by Accenture. Anders appears on PPC Hero's list of the top 25 influencers in the world. He is a regular presenter at conferences all over, including HeroConf London, inOrbit, SMX Advanced Europe, and the International Search Summit in Barcelona. He served as a judge at numerous industry award shows, including the UK Social Media Awards, European Content Awards, and the Grand Prix de Search. Nowadays, Anders, along with a few collaborators, create research papers which are far more rigorous and require far more research than the typical content you see in our industry. We're going to be speaking to Anders about a recent study he's done titled Digital Marketing in a VUCA World. To prepare this study, Anders interviewed the top experts in search. Full disclosure, SearchLab's director of paid media, Mark Irvin, was a contributor. Ordinarily, these reports would cost 250 euros, but as of this publication, there is a sponsor giving away free copies. Move quickly to get yours before time runs out. Grab something cold to drink and join me for a conversation about data with Anders Hjorth. We'll discuss a concept he refers to as data bubbles, a new approach to evaluating data that he calls data realism, and why savvy marketers aren't fighting automation. Anders Hjorth, welcome to Suds and Search. How you doing?
Thank you very much. I'm doing well. It's a little late where I am. I think you're in the middle of the day, yeah?
Yeah, it's 2:30 in the afternoon here. You're staying up late. I appreciate your time.
Not that late.
Yeah, I appreciate it nonetheless. So I right off the press, you've gotten this really interesting new report. We were talking about it off air. SearchLab's Vice President of Search, Mark Irvin, was part of the data, and so we're really excited about his contribution to it as well. I think to set the table here a little bit, how did you come up with this research? Who was involved, and how did you even get started doing this project?
So this is my fourth report. I started out a couple of years ago. So basically, I was running an agency like you. It was acquired, and that company was acquired by Accenture, sort of big corp, international. And I thought that was time for me to do something else. And so I started a new activity, and I wanted to do what I like the most, find trends and insight, and share it. So basically, that was the way I set off to do it. I've been a judge on Search Awards for many years. So I saw all these fantastic case studies. Maybe you've entered case studies in the Search Awards as well, and maybe one, I could imagine. So I've seen all these case studies and given out the trophies to winners, but we were only allowed to say 3 words, and the winner, 4 words. So, and the winner is, and then the name of the winner.
Yeah.
And it was very frustrating because I wanted to share all the fantastic insight that I've actually seen in there. So I started out building up a methodology for finding trends, not just whatever, and not sort of covering the entire market. So the methodology goes like this. I go out and interview 4, 5, 6, 7 experts, like Mark Irvin from your company. That sort of helps me focus and figure out what are the main trends that we want to look at. And then we build a questionnaire, really deep questionnaire. I think this last one was 85 or 86 questions. And then we invite typically winners of awards to participate. This time it was only digital marketing agencies and only award winners participating. So, and we've got 20 of them. So 20, really leading thought leaders and practice leaders, really. Insights from some of the top experts in the field. And then we look at all the data and we try to figure out what's in there, what can we share, how can we communicate it out in the best way. I do it with a co-author. This time it was a guy called Lucas Adamek, based in the UK, originally from the Czech Republic. And so we've worked together on this for 4, 5, 6 months. So the topic itself pretty much came out of just the times, the times that we're living in. And at the time we didn't know whether the report was going to come out after the crisis, during the crisis, in the middle of a crisis, so it's quite interesting to sort of figure out what are the things that people can take away from the impact of the COVID-19, but also some of the upcoming challenges. We have challenges all the time here in Europe. We have GDPR, which is data protection, and which limits a lot of the things we can do with data. And then, of course, we all have the end of cookies coming up. So there's plenty of things happening out there, and we wanted to cover that. So asked, I can tell a story, but it's much more powerful when we actually collect data from people leading the market out there and aggregating and presenting it in the best possible way. So that's the report that you had a look at.
Well, so interesting. And you have some vocabulary words that I wanted to see if you could define for me. So the title right away has this acronym VUCA,
yes,
which is used often. And to your point earlier, this is a report about a period of time that we're in right now and in the near future.
Yes.
What does VUCA stand for, and what does it have to do with all this?
Actually, so there was, I think this was a couple of years ago, there was this song, it just stayed in my head, Waka Waka. Do you remember that song by Shakira?
Sure, yeah.
So when I first saw this VUCA world, this VUCA word, I was like, VUCA VUCA. So it sort of rang a bell in my head. VUCA is just the abbreviation of 4 words: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And when I first sort of saw this, it's like a framework, but we're not applying it strictly into this. I just thought that this was sort of a very good way of explaining what's happening. Well, all the things that are happening at the same time in the world that we're living in. So I have this, huge confidence in and admiration of digital marketers, because they sort of they tend to surf the waves of change, of creative destruction, of challenges coming up, and so they move so fast. You gotta figure out what they're doing. So I wanted to look at what are they doing with all of these things hitting them at the same time, and they react in various ways. And first of all, we tried to measure. We asked all of them, how bad was the hit, and we're looking at an average of like lost 40% of media spend in these agencies. It's just crazy. So how can you even deal with that? So in the report, we're looking at how you cope with these things. What are the things that you're going to do in the future when the cookies are going to disappear? So yeah, I think this is so I got some feedback from a guy just today, and he said, "Wow, I just opened the report. These are all the things that we discuss every day."
Yeah.
So I think we're hitting something, and hopefully it can be useful for people. I want to share. I remember when I was running my own business, my own agency, I went to conferences because I always wanted to, figure out what was going to happen next year. It's not so much what's happening right now, but what's going to happen. What are the things that, so Google and Facebook and Amazon as well, they're presenting you with sort of this huge range of all the new things that are happening right now. You need to pick them all up. Yeah. Right. And you've got this long line of things, pick them all up because they're all going to be fantastic. And then I'm always sitting there thinking, okay, remember, we are the clients, and they're listening to, we're an audience. They're listening to this audience. How do we pick it up? What works for us? What doesn't work? So I wanted to do the same thing as Google's probably doing on their side. Figure out what are the things that the best are actually picking up and using and getting value from. So that's the exercise, and we're we feel that it's that we're getting to something. So also the fact of working with another expert in the field allows us to steer clear of any confusion, anything that is already sort of past. Figure out what's really cutting edge, and what can be useful for people out there.
Well, it's interesting, and to kind of underline this period we're in, you've talked about the challenges digital marketers have to get data, and we all want to be data focused, and you've mentioned some of them already. That regulation from the government, privacy regulation, has really hampered some of the data that we're used to getting, and that ad blocking software is on the horizon, or is already here in some cases. And what that has done is given, you've used this term, data bubbles, so to describe that these big these big companies now control all this data. How does that concept play into the reporting as well?
Yeah, so the data bubbles, they came sort of, so you know the picture of the walled gardens. So that's how we often talk about, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple. We talk about them as walled gardens, and so I wanted to change sort of that concept, because it isn't a garden. Maybe it's a garden for Google. It's Google's garden, and it's Apple's garden. But for us from the outside, it's a bubble. We don't know what's in there. It looks nice. And maybe it's, maybe they've inflated it a bit. Yeah. Maybe there's a bit more air in it than there should be. So I'm playing with this concept of, we get data. Most of the best data we get is from, Facebook is giving us fantastic data, aren't they? Google is giving us a lot of data. Amazon is giving us different data, but they're also, very generous with data. But that's also the pitch, isn't it? That's also their marketing to us. So I'm sort of playing with that concept of saying, yeah, well, they're giving us this. Now, is it true? And I think, when it sort of comes back to the idea of artificial intelligence as well, or black boxes. We have this concept of, it's a black box. You can't know what's in there. Okay, who said that?
Right.
Is it true? So I'm sort of looking at this as, I think some of this there's a lot of fantastic stuff, and then some of it I think is, made nice, because as you said, you've got data, and then you take away ad blocking. So now you have 70% of data. Then you take away lost cookies. Now you have 50% of data. Then you take away,
search term support is
search
doing away with a percentage of the reports.
You've got, I don't know, 40% of data, and then you can't connect that data with data you got from the other bubble. So you are down to 10% data, and then you're going out as an agency, you're going out to a client and saying, "This is what we see in the data. Are you sure?" Yes, I'm totally sure about this, because, and so I'm worried that we have less and less data. We're already, the most important data we have is conversion data, isn't it? And it's like 1% of all of it. So there's all these other things happening, and I think we need to be very aware of this, and we need to make sure that we understand what data we don't have. I think that is just as important as knowing, what we can find in the data, is, trying to figure out what is the data we didn't have. It could be offline data. I didn't mention that. There's offline data as well, right? What happened offline? Well, somebody went into a store, maybe. So yeah, it's really challenging most of the time, and digital marketing agencies are piecing this together. They're building customer journeys. They're actually getting a sort of an intuition for what's happening out there through that little peephole into the real data. I find it fascinating, and I also think that you have to be very careful with it. Careful with what data you have, the quality of it, how you combine it, and make sure you don't just take it for truth.
Yeah, and another thing, I've had a lot of experts like yourself on this show, and I'm hearing this just anecdotally. I didn't do the data, the research you did, but your research found that more agile workforces and almost like interdisciplinary training and having these flexible athletes in your agency is kind of in vogue right now, and it allows you to do things and go places up. What did the data show you?
So one of the questions, because we had this hunch that something was going on, and so we asked people who was thinking about totally abandoning offices. So that's kind of a pretty powerful question there. And then we had like 20%, 10 to 20% were saying, yeah, we're on our way out, or we already left. And so that's for me, that's mind blowing to say, there's no physical office anymore. It's becoming gradually. So COVID-19 lockdowns have forced people to work from home. And as far as I can see, nobody was bothered in the digital marketing section. Nobody was bothered by this. It was not a problem. Everybody could work. Took a couple of days to get it all organized, and then they were working fine. And now some of them are taking a step further. So it's quite interesting to see sort of that's a major change. I think it requires a different way of working, and then it requires you need to tackle a couple of challenges, especially in terms of I think training and culture are the most important ones. We're used to training people because it's so fast. I mean, everything that happens is so fast. You can't read a book and learn it all and be ready to work on it. You have to get experience. You have to learn from others. So the learning experience is extremely important. And how can you continue transmitting that when you're not physically in the same place? And we know now how it works with Zoom and how efficient these meetings that we have with 10, 15 people can be or not. So that's a major challenge, I think. And so that's sort of the short term is, we've been challenged with finding the right talent, hiring the right talent, getting them up to speed. And now the getting them up to speed part is a challenge as well. It used to be just just finding the guys. Now we have to get them up to speed. And so training is a challenge. But looking a little bit further, how do you keep it all together when people are not physically together in one place? How can you get them together? How can you get them to get a feeling for being part of the same team, of sharing the same values, even sharing the same vocabulary is not that simple, right? So a company culture is something, if you go back to the literature, it talks about rituals, visual elements. So there's a number of things there, and you can't really fit them all into to something that is done online only. So that's a big challenge. I don't think anybody has an answer to that, but I'm seeing it. I think digital marketing agencies and digital marketing companies overall are leading that trend of becoming sort of what's going to be next. I think that they're very, very advanced because they've been working with these data-driven and technology-driven providers all the time, and they've been having to take a hit of various kinds many times in their company lifetime. So I think they're well prepared. It doesn't mean that we can see the future. It doesn't mean that we know exactly what's happening, but there are these trends of moving away from offices or having remote work, online platforms, getting together sort of for training purposes, training, social interaction, open, casual, online, and also sort of the more structured parts of your business where you actually need to plan things into much more detail in terms of careers, in terms of sales. Huge challenge there. How to do sales in these new times. So many challenges out there.
No, without a question. I'm so interested in this idea you had about you call this data realism, if I'm not mistaken. This is another concept. So it's almost like a critique of people who, a topic you mentioned earlier, that people will come in with this much data and that's fact. That is treated as fact instead of partial data or maybe even a best guess. What does data realism mean? What does this concept, or define this one for our audience as well?
Wow. So it sort of built up. The concept of data realism sort of built up. The main thing is what I mentioned earlier about knowing what data you don't have. So reminding yourself that you're only looking at a very small fraction of the data, reminding yourself that there can be things happening that are not taken into account. And I think one of our experts, Aaron Levy, I think Mark knows him very well, a great guy. He one of his quotes was he was describing how people take the data they receive, and then they look at the data, but with tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision,
really
right?
like
I remember this. Yeah.
Sort of like you're looking at this data. Wow, okay, takes me there. I've seen and it almost comes back to training as well. When sort of new people come in and they see these interfaces the first time, first time you see Google Analytics, it's wow, this is beautiful. What does it say? Oh, I don't know. But you see the trend, you see something, what's happening here. So data realism is about trying to understand what it is that you're seeing and the things that could be wrong behind this, the things that are missing, the data that is not taken into account. So take the example of so I love that your colleague Mark's quote there. If it didn't happen on Amazon, it didn't happen. That's data realism. It's like, if you work with Amazon, you have Amazon data, and for Amazon is a data bubble, so it will not recognize the existence of anybody else. Only if there are some UTMs saying that this traffic came from the outside, it will. But most of the time, anything that didn't happen on the platform, that it's not in their data buckets, it didn't exist. And the same goes for the other data bubble. So there's overlap somewhere, but no, it doesn't exist. Take this down to a company level. I've actually seen this in my agency life, where a client, at the end of the year would call it, or this must have been January, you've got the chief financial officer looking at the data from last year, saying, hey, digital marketing manager, what's this here? I don't seem to get the counts of conversions to sum up there. You've got that many conversions, this turnover in one channel, this turnover in a second channel, and this turnover in a third channel. That's very nice, but if I add those three together, I get to a number which is double what we really did. Yeah. Maybe this conflict. So they call us up, agency, what happened? You must have been lying. Oh, sorry. He didn't say that, but we're not far away. It's like, accusations of what's going on here. You must have done something wrong. And then we said, well, this tracking, what else did you do? And then we realized that they had been, they've been using other networks in parallel, and the tracking tags, of course, were on the same page. And then you have, you've got networks that are a little bit more, pushy, and will put more cookies out there, and then you can get double conversions counted in two different channels. So data realism is about looking at this holistically, and considering what could go wrong if you outsource acquisition in one direction and then in the other direction as well. I think that's data realism as well, because it happens so often. And the first time you see this, you're like, wow, okay. But we need to grow up as an industry, and even though we probably also need to educate clients and educate everybody, because it goes so fast. And somebody who's asking you to run campaigns for you doesn't necessarily have all that in place. So I think there's something coming, and then at the same time, nobody wants to pay for data science, do they?
Yeah, that was one of the findings, right? So there was something like, it was less than the majority of people had somebody who really owned the data in the agency. I think it was like 40% or 45%. If I just read it, but
well, so the thing is, we asked the same question 2 years ago. So we did one survey 2 years ago, and then asked the same question again. And 2 years ago, we had a higher proportion of people saying, yes, we have a dedicated data scientist assigned to our projects. Now,
and today, wow.
Yes, and then it dropped this year, and we're like, okay, what does this mean? Does it mean that the role has changed, has moved to somewhere else? No, I can't believe that it's, so we're not looking at the same people. So it's not the same agencies that are saying this as 2 years ago, but it's still leading agencies, right? So I think there is a trend, but I think it's structural. I think it's, that responsibility is moving somewhere else. But there's also the fright, I'm afraid that, that people are, if you take the Google example, that people are saying, okay, I don't need to analyze all this data anymore. I just plug in the smart bidding; it works really well, right. And here come the results. So no need to analyze anymore. No need to, I don't need to worry. And if it doesn't work, I'll plug in another smart bidding algorithm and see if that works better. And that is short. That is dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and it's interesting. This is one of the recommendations from the report was that automation is your best friend, if I have it right, and that the people who fight automation are going to have a hard time. That they should lean in to use it and to figure out what to do. What is this recommendation all about?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about so if you go for automate as much as you can. So, and there's like we also talked about the sort of that time when you need to take a step back, when suddenly user behavior changes massively because everybody's from home and they can't actually go somewhere and they have to order online. When user behavior changes dramatically, the data is obsolete, isn't it? So you need to take a step back and think about, unplug the algorithms and replug on fresh data if possible. Yeah, that's data realism as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the so automation is definitely it's necessary, because otherwise, if you don't automate everything you can, then you're not competitive anymore, because somebody else is doing it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so you need to keep up with the pace of that, but also make sure that things interconnect. So we're seeing a trend of a small trend, but we are seeing a trend of some agencies going out and for bigger clients saying, now let's look at this holistically and look at how we can build a complete stack of your technology, working with our technology, working with media providers, so that we get the best possible view of the world. I mean, this is I think this is the ideal, because as soon as you pick one data platform, you're going to have add data from other places. It's not going to be as good. Yeah. I don't know if we mentioned sort of the dream of the DMP, or the disaster of the dream of the DMP data management platform. That dream of having all the data in one place and be able to share one audience to another channel and stuff, which has never proven to work really. But building a custom stack where you get the best of your clients' internal systems, your added value in those systems, and plugging in with the major platforms, seems to me to be a fantastic solution. But it also means that the technology isn't. It's not like you come in with it. In the old days, CRM systems, 10, 15, 20 years ago, was something where you would sign off on a project and you would have a CRM system 1 year later, and then you would have 1 year of consultants coming in to actually show you how it worked. Yeah. So data was fixed cost. It was something you put it in there and it couldn't move anymore. Technology is becoming variable. So you're taking in bits and pieces. You're using some BigQuery from Google. You're using some other stuff from here. You're making connectors to make the data flow in the right way. Sort of, that's interesting. The concept of saying, maybe we don't have to sign up with one provider and stay with them for life anymore. Maybe we need to find variable solutions so that we can make the best for every client. So that's quite an interesting trend as well that we saw in the data.
Yeah, the other recommendation, you touched on this earlier, but I want to kind of unpack it a little bit more if we could, was to decipher the black boxes. You mentioned this before, but how black are these black boxes? How do you decipher it, and how do you make sense of what's hidden?
I think what we need to apply to that sort of picture of black boxes is data realism. I mean, it is about not accepting that it's a black box and saying, okay, I need to understand what's going on. Yeah. So this is about looking at your input data, looking at your output data, looking at what changed in from you started until the end, and try to work your way into why this didn't work or why this worked. Yeah. And I think it's too easy to go out and say, hey, I'll just plug into something and see if it works. I mean, so I'm all for test and learn, but we need to learn. Testing alone is not enough. Yeah, we need to learn.
Yeah.
This goes for any testing you do. If you do A/B testing of landing pages, whatever, if you forget to write down what you learned from that test, you haven't come anywhere. You've won a quarter, but you want to win a year. You want to win 2 years. Yeah. So the first thing in this concept of deciphering black boxes is to first of all not believe that it's that black. Yeah, so black boxes is sort of it's an image. It's whenever somebody talks about artificial intelligence, you have this image saying, okay, it's something where you don't know how it works, you give it input and you get output. Okay, but I really think we need to understand as much as we can about what's going on, because if we don't, we're giving away the keys to our house. Because basically the providers of black boxes can then put in there anything they want. And if I sort of go very far back to the beginning of paid search, in the beginning there was Google AdWords and there was Overture. Overture was so Google was on Google and Overture was on everybody else. And there was competition to Google at that time. And it was so powerful. This traffic was so good that very quickly on both sides, they started diluting the traffic. They started adding, affiliate networks, other sites that didn't have the search qualification of the data. Google created the whole AdSense network as these are affiliates. It's not the same traffic. And they were trying to dilute the traffic because it was too good. And they could sell a less good product at the same price. Right. So take that concept, put it on your black box, and think about who's controlling your black box. And I'm like, well, I've seen what was it, a maximized clicks. I used that once, maximize clicks, and I got a ton of clicks. But when we looked into the auction, there were clicks that were totally extremely expensive. Yeah. And there's just no reason why a click should cost more than $20-$30. So there was bad inventory in there, but I only asked for clicks, didn't I? So it's fair. So that's the concept, and saying, okay, so at that time we could still go back in the search terms report that you mentioned, losing that data is bad. But I just think we have to keep trying to understand what's happening in each case. If we want to learn from it, and we want to learn from it if we want to survive in sort of the medium long term, don't we?
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, it's a fascinating report, and it's way more rigorous than what I'm used to reading in our industry. So I want to compliment you and your co-author.
Spent some time on it.
For how much you put into this. It's really sensational, and we'll link to it. Anders, how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more?
So we actually have a sponsor on this report who's still giving away free copies. So the price of the report is €250, which is, I know it's quite hefty for most people, and actually a lot of people don't want to buy reports. They want to read reports but not buy them. It's like data scientists. We want them, but we don't want to pay for them. But we've got a sponsor who's actually giving away a free copy still. So if you go into so the easiest way is to go into innovell.com, which is my website. Innovell, INNOVELL.com. From the front page, click on the yellow button on the report. Go to that page, and there you can see the instructions to get it for free. So the user experience is really bad because of GDPR, because I'm not allowed to share people's data, so they have to go somewhere else for my sponsor to collect their data and then go back and buy the report from me for free. So that's not easy, but any obstacle, you can get in touch with me directly if you want.
All right. Well, I was having such a good time talking about this. I ran over time, but I want to have you back on to talk about Amazon and the reports you've done on Amazon too. You're one of the world's experts on Amazon ads, and I'm like our audience, I don't know much, so I would love to have you back on another time to do that if you're up for it.
Happy to. Would love to. Thanks, Mark.
Well, Anders, thanks so much for doing this. And I learned a lot. I just commend you guys. This was really fun to talk to you about this report, and really the rigor of the work it showed.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. We'll see you guys next time on Suds and Search. Thanks again for coming on, Anders.